One of the greatest lies that was told to me was this: creativity is all about out-of-the-box thinking. I'm sure they peddle the same lie to you too. I realized this was a lie in my first job. My first job, incidentally, was in the creative department of an advertising agency. My first job was to create a print advertisement. I still remember. They put me in a box. They called it a cubicle. My client service executive came up and said, "Congratulations, you're on to create your first advertisement." Well, this is going to be a quarter-page advertisement, the dimensions of which are clearly defined in the creative brief. There are some mandatories. You need to put the client's logo, his address, his telephone numbers, website URL, email ID, the list of all the dealers with their coordinates. Add to that, the client is also an ISO certified company, so you need to mention that along with the emblem of the certifying body. There's a mascot with the tagline, you need to add that. Plus, in addition to that, you need to stick to the fonts and the color scheming as defined in this 50-page document. That's it. Go ahead, unleash your creativity. I felt boxed. Days later, another client service executive came to my cubicle and said, "Congratulations, you are here to create your first television commercial." By this time, I was mentally more prepared. He went on to saying, "Look, the client does not have budget for big models, for multi-locations, for state-of-the-art cameras, post-production, splendors, animations, etc., etc. All that he's got a budget is for a half-a-day shoot of a model, a customer to be more precise, who's going to parrot about 5 good lines about the company and the product. Your task is therefore to write those 5 lines. That's it. Go ahead, unleash your creativity." I felt boxed again. I'm sure any one of you who spent enough time in applied creativity or corporate creativity would have experienced that same feeling of being boxed, which made you wonder, where on earth is this out-of-the-box thinking? Well, you see, you don't need to be taught how to think out of the box. We are all naturally gifted out-of-the-box thinkers. At least that was the lesson that was taught to me by my creative guru. If you're wondering who my creative guru is, and if you're thinking probably it's one of those Renaissance artists like Da Vinci or Michelangelo, or any of those Victorian poets like Lord Tennyson, Oscar Wilde, or any of the Hollywood legends like Christopher Nolan, Tarantino, Scorsese, you're mistaken. My creative guru is my 5-year-old son. His first work of art was to color an apple. Simple, right? Pretty simple. My son took his red-colored crayon and started meticulously coloring the apple. After he finished coloring the apple, he went on to coloring the small square box in which the apple was kept. And once he finished that, he started coloring outside the square box. And once he finished that, he reached out to the wall and is about to scribble in the walls, which is when I intervened and I said, "Stop!" Innocently, he looks up to me and he says, "Why should I stop?" That is the nature of children. They don't stop. They break boundaries and they think out of the box almost all the time. Okay, let me crunch this with another illustration. In a kindergarten classroom, a group of children were asked to draw and color the White House. Give a group of children a few coloring materials and a sheet of paper, and invariably they will draw 2 mountains, a sun popping out, a brook flowing by, grass sprouting up. The grass may be pink in color, the mountains may be yellow in color, the sun may be blue in color, but they wouldn't care. They would go about smearing colors all over themselves and they will have a ball of a time. There was this one child who was not drawing, he was looking static at the wall. The teacher went up to him and said, "Young man, "Why aren't you drawing anything?" And the little boy said, "Teacher, how can I draw a white house on a white sheet of paper with these colored materials?" The teacher was mighty impressed. She took that sheet of paper, placed it on the notice board, and put a small footnote that read, "This is the best depiction of the White House." How many teachers would do that? A typical one would tear into the child and say, "Are you trying to act smart with me? Go call your parents. I want to talk to them tomorrow." And the next day, the mother would come running to the school and say, "Oh no, this kind of weird behavior he inherited from his father's side. My side's people are all just about fine." And the next day, the mother would sit with the child with a cane in her hand, asking the child to draw the White House at least 100 times. And after that, ask the child to draw anything. Probably he'll draw the White House. Our education system conditions children to think within boundaries, to think within limits, sabotaging their creativity. Which is why Dr. Radhakrishnan, the second president of independent India, said, "Ours is an education system that pampers imitators and persecutes innovators." So it's easy to be an out-of-the-box thinker. All you need to do is to touch base with the child within you. So if you want to do creative work for yourself, like say write a blog for yourself, or to come up with a creative journal for yourself, then by all means go ahead, be an out-of-the-box thinker. But if you want to graduate to the next level, remember what David Ogilvy said. If it doesn't sell, it's not creative. The world will define the boundaries within which you need to create whatever you're choosing to create, whether it's a new product, an artwork, a film, a poem, a play, a dance drama, anything. The boundaries will be defined in terms of the available resources, the set of rules, the financial constraints, customer centricity, and a whole gamut of things. Think about it. Even this very TED talk on creativity needs to fit into boundaries. The boundary of time, 18 minutes tops. The boundary of frame. I cannot let my hands flail around so that it goes out of the frame. The boundary of subsisting with interesting ideas, because TED as a platform is all about ideas worth sharing. So, if you want to go further, you need to graduate from out-of-the-box thinking to inside-out creativity. I define inside-out creativity as a process through which you aim to the best on the inside and you radiate the same as elegant expression. It's quite like the oyster principle. The oyster marinates on the inside, polishing the grain of sand, that singular grain of sand, till the pearl is created. When you nurture that discipline, then you'll effortlessly ease your creative expression to a canvas as big as the Sistine Chapel, or a creative as elementary as a 5-line television commercial. There will be no more frustration, even if you're feeling boxed, because your validation comes from within. I remember a client who wanted to launch a new product and said, "DJ, I want an out-of-the-world idea for my new product launch." I came up with one. I said, "How about projecting your brand with a laser beam all the way to the moon on a full moon night?" You should have seen him cringe. He did a simple mental math about the estimate, and it sure got him spaced out. He immediately defined the dimensions of the box within which I had to think. I smiled and I delivered the goods. There are so many ways to nurture that inside-out creative discipline. In my time-bound speech, I'll present a few. Look at the lives of the creative greats who made a difference to the world. With the exception of none, I would say they all respected the process. A lot of people think that the creative greats were gifted with moments of inspiration. Isaac Newton under the apple tree, Archimedes inside the bathtub, Paul McCartney, who in a dream had the complete lyrics and the concept and the idea of the song Yesterday, which he considered to be his most adored song ever. We all wait for those moments of inspiration. But what if we don't get them? And a lot of people believe that, yes, it is inspiration that takes you to creative genius. True, inspiration is important, but the creative process is as much about preparation, about mental agility, about developing good habits, rituals, as it is about the moments of inspiration. So here are a few things. The first thing, to know what is the best in you, you can start by reaching out to the best outside of you. There's a creative technique called Adopt a Genius. Personally, I love this technique. And I follow this technique diligently. All you need to do is adopt a genius or a few geniuses in the psychological canvas of your mind. When I wanted to be a writer, I decided to list a few geniuses. And I decided not to read any of their works. You heard that right. I decided not to read any of their works. I decided to study them. When I wanted to be a filmmaker, I didn't read scripts. I studied them. When I wanted to be a speaker, I didn't listen to speeches. I studied them. Yes, I became a student. Every master is a good student at first, not in terms of the grades, but in terms of the creative absorption. The second thing, have some daily rituals. Find your own creative space, your own sacred space, as some creatives call it. Roald Dahl had this discipline. He would wake up every day, set a timer. He would have all the things that's required for his writing: pencils, sharpeners, erasers, coffee, sheets of paper, and he would write diligently every single day. Also define your space. The first 30 minutes of your day is called the Platinum 30. It is said that you are at your creative best in those 30 minutes. So invest your creative energies in those early waking hours. The fourth, know how your target audience thinks. Early in life, I lost a job as a creative consultant to an e-commerce company. The deciding authority to test my creativity asked me a few questions. One of which was, how do you explain color to a blind person, especially a person who was visually impaired from birth? I said I needed time to think it over. I thought a visually impaired person was sharp with his other senses, so I presented my case with that in mind. My prospective client then asked me, how many visually impaired people did you meet in your life for this exercise? I said, none. The prospect outright rejected me, saying, if you think you know 100% how people think, even those whom you've never met or spoken to, then you're not the kind of person we are looking for. We are living in a world of moving targets. Learn about them if you want to connect with them. The fourth thing, test your ideas. Use the ROI checklist to tick off the boxes. By ROI, I'm not referring to the return of investment, which, by the way, is very important. R stands for relevance. Is your idea relevant to your target, fits into a budget, and ticks off all the mandatories? O stands for originality. Now, originality is a very difficult concept to fathom and an even more difficult concept to attain, which is why Mark Twain said, there is no such thing as plagiarism. There is no such thing as plagiarism because there is no such thing as originality. I stands for impact. My father always used to say, the purpose of all communication is to express and not to impress. Those days are gone. Today, if your expression does not impress, people will not like or dislike you, they will simply ignore you. Okay, so that is my 2 bits worth. Now, some of you may be wondering, I don't have anything to do with creativity, so why should I bother about all this? Daniel Pink, in his book titled The Whole New Mind, says, the future of the world is going to be dominated by the right brain thinkers, which is the domain of the creative mind. A lot of left brain jobs are going to become redundant. Or worse, they will be eliminated by automation and AI. As my time is ticking, I would like to wrap up with a small poem, an incomplete poem that was penned by a 10-year-old boy. When I grow up, I want to live in a world without limits. When I grow up, I want to swim in an ocean without barriers. When I grow up, I want to navigate the woods without boundaries. Today, that 10-year-old boy is in front of you to complete that incomplete poem. As a grown-up, I can excel in a world within limits. As a grown-up, I can present the entire ocean in a single drop. As a grown-up, I can encapsulate the entire forest in a single seed. All because I am an inside-out thinker. The big question, how about you?